June 27th, 2024, when Donald Trump and Joe Biden took the screen on NBC News. Me and my family gathered around the living room couch like it was the newest episode of Love Island with popcorn, snacks, wine for the adults. And we watched, shocked and a little horrified, as topics ranged from how heavy a golf club a 70-year-old man could swing to, if democracy was at stake. And as we watched, I was honestly excited. Not for the state of our country, but for the whirlwind that was bound to take place on social media. The second I opened my phone, my feed was flooded, with news sources rushing to proclaim who won, who lost, fact checking, analysis, even AI videos of Trump and Biden playing Fortnite. And yet, not a speck of optimism, an alternative solution, or what even seemed like a viable way forward. And when the candidates seemed like they hate each other more than ever, our society felt more polarized than ever before. And as we watched every news source rush to proclaim a winner, it felt like the real loser was the 55% of Americans who weren't happy with either of their choices, according to a PBS poll that same year. As I sat in my bed doom scrolling, it made me wonder, if our society has already dwelled in our pessimism enough, then isn't it time to switch our perspective to solutions? I truly felt, like many others in my generation, at a crossroads between the right and the left, and yet somehow being ignored by both. Currently, political polarization is exacerbating our inability to discuss real solutions together, meaning our problems and issues, the problems of the American people, go unheard and unresolved. So, we have to ask ourselves, how much is America's focus on right and wrong and pessimism killing civil discourse? But before we get into all of that, let's understand the basics. Currently, political polarization is at an all-time high. Crazy statement, I know, but let's look at some actual numbers to back that up. According to the Pew Research Center, most Americans have increasingly stated that political debate in the US has become less respectful, less fact-based, and less substantive. But it's hard not to feel a little despaired, if not completely hopeless, when it comes to our ability to discuss real solutions together. But does that mean we're never going to be able to talk to someone from the other side again? I don't think so. Like I said before, we've dwelled in our pessimism enough, and now it's time to switch our perspective to solutions. But in order to do that, we have to actually understand the causes of political polarization. In attempting to do so, most Americans have looked towards the news and social media. So, just how guilty are they? Well, as the old saying goes, any publicity is good publicity, especially for politicians who are constantly campaigning even when it's not an election year. Whether it's for their party, a policy, or even themselves, these politicians rely on media coverage to stay relevant to voters. The issue is, our media rewards negativity with this essential publicity. According to Sergio Poljiak in the International Journal of Press and Politics in 2019, when politicians use uncivil forms of negativity, in other words, flat out rude to other politicians, they're more likely to gain media coverage. The issue is, this isn't a new occurrence, but rather an established phenomenon. One study in the mid-2000s found that almost half of campaign coverage in the US, Germany, Italy, and Austria all found that these campaign coverages conveyed negative news, while as little as 6% actually conveyed any positive news. No wonder why everything feels so despairing, because it's all that's fed to us. It what gets the most engagement, anger, fear, and pessimism. But it isn't only negative news that puts the party against each other. Social media has also contributed to the rise of political polarization, but in a way that's a little bit scarier and a little bit more unconscious. Currently, filter bubbles are exacerbating our inability to discuss real solutions together. In his own TED Talk, Eli Pariser coined the term filter bubbles for how filters and algorithms on social media isolate us from other perspectives. These filters and algorithms don't ask for your permission. to filter out what they think you don't want to hear. They simply do it without you even realizing it. Meaning that these feedback loops almost exclusively reach a point where users only see content that they agree with. So when social media was made to be an echo chamber of different ideas, now it's just an echo chamber of your own thoughts. Do you remember when social media first emerged? When it was made to be a hodgepodge of different ideas, cultures, and traditions, where you could talk to people from all over the world. But now all social media is people stagnating in their own pool of ideas. We're never going to be able to talk to someone about real solutions or talk to someone from the other side when we're being conditioned to stay separate. But these external factors work alongside our internal factors, our biases that prevent us from communicating with the other side. Confirmation bias is a term coined by psychologist Peter Watson for how people are more likely to value news that confirms their own beliefs. For example, in campaign coverage, when people are more likely to enjoy news that paints the candidate they want to win in a positive light, while filtering out any news that paints their candidate in a negative light. Confirmation bias works alongside desirability bias, the tendency for people to only value news that they want to hear. So let's take a presidential poll, for example. If someone who wanted Kamala Harris to win the 2024 election looked at two separate polls, one telling them that Trump was leading in Pennsylvania and one telling them that Harris was leading in Pennsylvania, they're more likely to listen to the poll that told them that Harris was leading in Pennsylvania, what they want to hear, no matter the legitimacy of that poll. But these external factors work alongside our internal factors. This means, right now, it seems like everything's stacked up against us: news, social media, and even ourselves. But does that mean we're never going to be able to talk to someone from the other side normally again? Like I said before, I don't think so. Now that we actually understand the causes of political polarization, we can switch our perspective to solutions. Let's go back to that Trump-Biden debate I talked about in the beginning. Something tells me that Trump did not get onto that stage thinking he was going to finally convince Biden he wasn't mentally all there. And that Biden did not get onto that stage thinking he was going to finally convince Trump he lost that 2020 election. But that's what they talked about. Not because they wanted to share ideas or discuss solutions, but because they wanted to win. They wanted to be right. And while that may be okay in a political debate, the issue is when that seeps into how we actually communicate our own ideas with one another. There's been a new focus on negativity in our society. This has resulted in a new appeal in politics: negative partisanship. The powerful force that drives people to the polls, not to champion a party they believe in, but to strike down one that they fear or despise, perpetuating our need to hate the other party. This appeal to negativity and America's need for right and wrong is driving away people just like me, teenagers who actually care about politics, to try and make a difference, slowly turn away as it turns into a game of winning and losing. According to CBS News in 2019, the number one reason why we don't pass climate change policy isn't the economics, it isn't the cost. It's because of political polarization. Rising inflation rates, high real estate prices in our own city of Miami, Florida, the immigration crisis. No matter how you think these topics or issues should be addressed, they need to be addressed. And when our Congress is so focused on hating each other and winning that they can't understand actual compromise and they don't focus on solutions, we all lose as our issues go unheard and our problems go unaddressed. Look, I know the solutions I've talked about today are easier said than done. But if one person comes out of today's talk a little bit more open-minded, a little bit more aware of their biases, then we can shift the echo chamber that social media was meant to be, to one of open minds and civil discussion. Therefore, when we understand that everyone has their own political opinions for their own reasons, And that's what's so beautiful about it, that we all differ and we all have the power to share. Thank you.